Animal Care, Unit 1, Animal Health, January 2017, question paper. Which diseases can be spread by ticks from sheep? Lyme's disease. Lyme's disease is a particularly nasty disease spread by ticks. Marek's disease is from chickens, and Salmonella is from eating contaminated food, ringworm from a variety of different animals, but ticks is Lyme's disease. Which part of an animal's body should be examined first? Well, whilst your hands are clean, you should examine the eyes, because it's really easy to get eyes infected. So you examine those first while your hands are clean. A bearded dragon in good health, well, we could say any reptile like a snake or a tortoise. They need to bask, that means soak up heat from their surroundings to keep their body temperature up, because they're cold-blooded or ectothermic, so that's normal. And white and brown feces or poo. The white and brown feces is normal in a reptile like a bearded dragon or a snake or a tortoise. The presence of ear mites in a dog. So mites are parasitic parasites that bite and suck blood from an animal. So if they're in the ear, you might see red or black dots inside the ear to indicate that there's spots of blood where the mites have been biting. You also get increased wax production in the ear. Toxocara cati, something to learn, is roundworm. Roundworm in cats. Toxocara means roundworm. A vector is a biting insect, an insect that carries disease by biting other animals, such as a mosquito, or a mite, or a flea, or a tick. Mosquito, flea, mite, tick, any biting insect. Pyrexia is when you get a fever, so the answer is increased body temperature. Increased temperature. Myxomatosis is a virus, often in rabbits, and you get a discharge, that means you get a runniness, runny eyes and runny nose. Myxomatosis. Electrolytes are chemicals that we need, and we take them in fluids. Sometimes we get health drinks with these electrolytes in. Minerals that are in electrolytes that we need for a healthy chemical balance in our body are sodium and potassium. You could also have calcium, magnesium, or chloride. Why a cat in a cattery could be gaining weight. It might be pregnant. It may not be getting enough exercise, or it may have an infection. Why are bacteria in vaccinations? Vaccinations are carried out to stop us getting diseases. Well, we use the bacteria from the disease to try and stop us getting the disease by putting the bacteria into something called a vaccination. But before we do that, the bacteria are modified or changed. That's so that the bacteria put into the vaccination do not harm us, are not harmful. And secondly is because bacteria become resistant to vaccination. So to stop resistance to vaccinations and to prevent harm. Cacotrophs, that's where a rabbit will eat its own feces. Why do they eat their own feces? It's because usually they've been eating grass. and they need to pass it through their digestive system, their gut, more than once, because the first time they don't get enough nutrients from it. So grass is poor quality food, and they can't get the nutrients from it first time, so they eat their own feces and get more nutrients from it again when it goes through their system, through their gut. However, in a rabbit enclosure we feed it pellets and good quality food, so the answer is it gets the nutrients from its food first time because we give it good quality food in its cage. One situation where an animal is more susceptible to mite infections, an example of that, mites tend to live in grass and woodland. So if you're walking your dog, say for example, in grass or woody areas, then they tend to get mites when they've been walked in wooded or grassy areas. 2 signs of stress in chickens. First of all, they'll become anxious and run away. So if they run away from you. And secondly, clawing at the ground, scratching at the ground is another example of stress in chickens. Hypothermia means that you've got cold, become cold. So you've got a lower body temperature. Your body temperature has become low. How often a dog should be treated for fleas? Usually about every 3 months. In addition to date, state one other piece of information that will be entered onto a dog's flea treatment record: the dosage, how much medication they've had. Also, possibly the weight of the dog could be recorded as well. A dog warden has been called to catch a stray dog. The behaviour of the dog is being displayed here. It looks very aggressive. 2 types of equipment suitable to restrain the dog. Let's have a look how many marks. It's for 4 marks. So we need the equipment and what it's going to do. Number 1, a muzzle on the dog to prevent it biting the warden. Secondly, a leash or a harness, a lead, to prevent the animal from escaping. So a muzzle to prevent biting, a leash or a lead, or a harness to prevent it escaping. A cat has salmonella. 2 treatments. Well, salmonella is a bacterial infection, a disease. A disease can be treated with antibiotics. And secondly, if you get a disease, you always drink plenty of fluids to flush the disease out of the system. So antibiotics, and give the cat fluids. 2 procedures undertake when treating a cat. Well, a cat tends to bite and scratch and run away. So restrain the animal, gently restrain it so it doesn't get too anxious and stressed. And secondly, probably wear gloves. So you might consider wearing gloves or some kind of protection in case it bites you. How a cat can become infected with tapeworms. Well, it's a circular process. The cat might have a tapeworm. The worm may come out in the feces, and in the feces, the worm segments in the feces may hatch. So any eggs in the worm segments can hatch in the feces. That's number 1. The worm eggs from the cat can hatch in the feces to make new worms. The mouse eats the feces, gets worms. The cat eats the mouse and then it gets the worms back. So number 1, the eggs, the worm segments, get into the feces and the eggs hatch into worms. The mouse takes in the feces and gets worms. The mouse is then eaten by the cat and the cat gets the worms back. A new dog arrives in the centre. It needs a health check. Discuss how you complete the health check for 8 marks and signs you would indicate for illnesses. So what you need is 4 health checks and 4 signs that they're illnesses. Number 1, a visual check for any pain or anxiety. A sign of an illness might be that it's limping or making a noise or shaking. Secondly, check its eyes after you've done a visual check to see if there's any discharge from the eyes. Check its nose, any discharge from its nose. Check its fur, fur check. If the fur is matted or maybe the skin looks unhealthy or flaky, that could indicate that it's got an illness such as fleas or ticks or mites. You could do a weight check. Check its weight. If it's underweight, then it might indicate that it's not had enough food. It's not getting food. Or maybe it's got an illness such as worms. You could check its teeth, a teeth check. If it's got tartar on its teeth, so if the teeth are discoloured, then it will need that removed because it can get a bacterial infection in its mouth and in its gums.